So it's now 4 o'clock in Thailand. I think I'm going to start. Hello, everyone. My name is Nipita Paklitanagun from JNP Legal, a member of the League of Lawyers from Bangkok, Thailand. I am also the secretary of the League. I'll be your moderator for this webinar. It is my privilege to welcome you all to the third of the League of Lawyers Asia-Europe Foreign Investment webinar series. This is your opportunity to listen to two distinguished speakers who shall be speaking on the topic of foreign investment in their respective jurisdictions, both in Asia and Europe. You will have an opportunity to ask questions as well by sending your questions in writing to our chat box. The question will be asked at the end of their presentation, but we may not have time to answer all questions as this webinar will be concluded in an hour time. Before we begin, let me take a moment to first introduce the League of Lawyers. Let me share a screen with you. So the League of Lawyers is an international network of independent law firms across Asia and Europe. We were founded in 2012 by 5 founding law firms with the objective of helping our clients gain access to legal services from a trusted professional wherever in the world they might be needed. Therefore, we have developed our network of what we perceive as globalized lawyers with country-specific expertise. Today, the League serves the needs of our members and clients in 21 jurisdictions across the Asia-Pacific, Europe, and the Middle East. Our board is well represented with members from the UK, Thailand, Switzerland, Germany, and Malaysia. The uniqueness of our network is that members develop very close working relationship with each other so that we are able to either refer matters to each other with the confidence that our clients will be well looked after or work together effectively on cross-border or transcontinent matters. Today's webinar is a part of the League's drive to bring value to our members and clients in the face of the global COVID-19 pandemic. And as our law firms have transformed digitally, just like many other businesses, the League has as well. We are therefore proud to present to you today's webinar on foreign investments in Singapore and the UK. Due to their long and well-established relationship and history, these two countries were selected. According to Wikipedia, Singapore is the UK's largest trading partners in Southeast Asia, with 2/3 of UK exports to this region flowing into Singapore. The UK is the 4th largest foreign investor in Singapore. There are over 31,000 British nationals and some 700 British companies in Singapore. In fact, the UK-Singapore Free Trade Agreement came into force just on the 11th February this year. Its immediate benefits include elimination of 84% of all tariff lines for Singapore exports to the UK. On that note, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Lim Bio Xuan, who is a director at BC Lim & Lau Advocates and Solicitors in Singapore. Mr. Lim, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes, hi, thank you very much, Lipita. I just want to take the opportunity to also thank Raymond and his team for the organizing this, because this is so important to all of us to be able to have this opportunity to meet up in circumstances like this. Okay, let me try to share screen. I'm not sure whether, are you able to see the share screen?
Yes, very well.
Okay, first, yes, let me share a little bit about Singapore. Singapore, as many of you know, we are a terribly small country. So my second slide shows the map of Southeast Asia. For those of you who are familiar, you can see Singapore right at the tip of Malaysia. I think Nibita, Raymond, you're all probably familiar because you're all part of Southeast Asia. So we're at that very small tip at the just between Malaysia and Indonesia. On the map, you probably can't even see Singapore as a country. So let me show a little bit about Singapore. That is the small little island that we have, Singapore. And then some basic statistics. Are you with me? You can see the statistics. So Singapore is a really small country. Our total land area is 728.3 square kilometers. We have a total population of about 5.68 million, of which 3.52 million are citizens. The rest of the population will be either permanent residents or transient workers. Transient workers meaning those who are here either on employment pass, S-pass, work permits, etc. We have no natural resources, highly dependent on trade. No natural resources means that we even have to import water from Malaysia. So I'm terribly nice to Raymond because I need Raymond to be speaking up in Malaysia for Singapore, because if he cuts off our water, we are in trouble. Even sand, we need to import sand from various places. We initially imported sand from Malaysia, Indonesia, and now it's Vietnam and Myanmar. To survive, we have tried to position ourselves as a trading country. We try to keep our taxes low, so our corporate tax rate is a flat 17%. Then for individual tax rate, if you're a Singaporean or if you're a resident in Singapore, you are subject to a range of taxes. The low income, many of them don't pay taxes. If you earn a little bit more, you pay 2%, and the maximum personal income tax rate is 22%. We also have goods and services tax, or what some of you would call VAT, value added tax, of 7%. The government has plans to increase this from 7% to 9% eventually. We are resisting it because of political pressure. Last year was COVID year, so last year we were able to continue to bring in 17.2 billion Sing dollars in terms of fixed asset investments. I know this figure doesn't seem very much to many of you because you're much bigger, but for a small country like this, it helps us put food on the table. Okay, the regulatory authorities that regulates foreign investment in Singapore would really be the Ministry of Trade and Industry. There's a government ministry. They generally oversees matters relating to trade and investments to ensure that our economy continues to be competitive and attractive to investors. So Singapore has a relatively open investment regime. It doesn't have specific umbrella legislation on foreign direct investment. The specific body that looks into foreign investment in Singapore is the Economic Development Board, and they are the ones that formulate and implement industrial and economic strategies of Singapore. The EDB is also in charge of attracting foreign investments, and I have provided a link there. If any one of you are interested, just send me an email. I'll be happy to forward the website link to you. So the two logos of the government ministry and the statutory board in charge of foreign investment in Singapore. So, however, there are some barriers to entry for foreign investments in certain sectors, and this is where the sector-specific laws are applicable. In general, we regulate foreign investment in the following sectors. 1 is financial services and banking. 2 is media. 3 is legal services. 4 is on land ownership and real estate. Okay, let me run through briefly financial services. The types of banking activities and that financial institutions are allowed to carry out are tied to the conditions of relevant licenses granted to them. So you have a full banking license, you have a qualifying full bank, and a wholesale bank. So for example, those licensed as wholesale banks are not allowed to operate retail banking facilities which are dominated in Singapore dollars. So you cannot operate an ATM, automated teller machines, and there are various restrictions. Then media, we are a bit sensitive to what the media says. So we do have restrictions on media. So newspaper companies can only take the form of public companies limited by shares, and companies can only issue ordinary and management shares. So directors of such companies are required to be Singapore citizens because we do not want foreigners to influence the minds of Singaporeans and import ideas which we are not comfortable with. So we make sure that directors of media companies are required to be Singapore citizens. And we have legislative restrictions in the broadcasting sector as well. This is to prevent foreign investors from owning or controlling more than 49% of the shares of voting company in a broadcasting company. So this would be those that broadcast movies, broadcast news, etc. And if you want to be a substantial shareholder, you need regulatory approval. So we do have a very tight control of the media in terms of newspaper as well as broadcasting. Of course, we can argue that all of this is not relevant anymore in the light of social media. Even if we control the newspaper and broadcasting machine, we still have social media like Facebook, Twitter, that we can't really control. Okay, law. I think many of you are lawyers, so you should know that all law practices are subject to a licensing regime which determines the range of Singapore law-related services that you can offer. So for example, we have the foreign law practice, FLP, and they may offer legal services in foreign and international law. They can undertake Singapore law-related legal services in permitted areas of legal practice. With the qualifying foreign law practice, this is not open for registration yet. We also have joint law venture, which is a legal entity formed between a Singapore law practice and a foreign law practice. Then we have a foreign law alliance with Singapore law practice. And this is really to allow the Singapore law firms to work together with foreign law practices to develop certain areas of law in Singapore. I think Singapore is also trying to build up on its arbitration practice. I think we rank #1 together with London as one of the top arbitration centers in the world. Land ownership. Okay, foreign investors generally do not face restrictions on purchasing commercial, industrial properties, warehouses, and hotels. For industrial practice, they may be subject to approval by Jurong Town Corporation or JTC, which manages most industrial land in Singapore. For larger foreign investors, you can apply for industrial land through the EDB, Economic Development Board, who will work with JTC to source the industrial land for you. Now, there are specific restrictions restricting foreign ownership of landed residential property. Foreigners are free to buy residential apartments and condominiums, except that you need to pay a higher stamp duty. So stamp duty currently is about 4%. The additional buyer stamp duty are imposed on foreigners, and that can be up to 20%. So if you are absolute foreigner, that means you're not a permanent resident, it's 20%. If you're a foreign entity, it's 25%. Basically, this is to manage the supply of residential property so that Singaporeans are not outpriced for their homes. But for commercial property, foreigners are free, foreign companies are free to buy them and invest in them. Now, I thought I would spend a little bit time on environmental restrictions because we are so small, 700 over square kilometers. Our focus is really on knowledge-based sectors, hence investments that require too much land space or low-skilled workers or industries which are pollutive. They are less likely to be well received in Singapore. It's not absolute no, but we do pay special attention. So for example, we don't have shoes or apparel factories because these are labor intensive. I doubt you can find low-cost workers in Singapore. We also don't have car assembly factories because of pollution. I'm not quite sure because we are actually interested in electric cars manufacturing, but we are still working with companies that are interested in building electric cars to see what is the technology like. But for the conventional ICE, that is the internal combustion engine cars, we are concerned about the amount of pollution that they will generate. So just to give you a range, these are the various environmental legislation in Singapore. We have Carbon Pricing Act, Control of Vectors and Pesticides, Energy Conservation Act, etc., etc. And basically, because we are small, any amount of environment pollution will affect us very easily. Okay, now I next turn to anti-money laundering. I think we are a financial center and there are quite a lot of funds flowing in through Singapore. So we do have strict restrictions regarding anti-money laundering and combating of the Financing of Terrorism Act. So the main law is really this act called the Corruption, Drug Trafficking and Other Serious Crimes Confiscation of Benefits Act, or CDSA. We also have the Terrorism Suppression of Financing Act. And all this are to make sure that Singapore does not become a center for money laundering, for either drug trafficking or terrorism. So Singapore complies with sanctions imposed by United Nations, and this will be sanctions against Iran and North Korea. We also are concerned about dealings with this PEP, politically anti-connected people. Okay, this is terrible. I can't remember what does PEP stand for. Anyone? I'm a PEP, so okay, and we have a need to report on suspicious transactions. Okay, then we go on to registration of business. There are generally no government approvals for foreign investments in Singapore unless they are part of the sector-specific restrictions. Investors can set up business by registering with the Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Authority, or ACRA. So as long as you need to carry out an activity based on a continual basis for the purpose of profit, you must register with ACRA. Foreigners can own the company and own 100% of the shareholdings, except for those sector-specific restrictions. What are the types of business? I think these are quite common. You have sole proprietorship, you have partnership, limited partnership, limited liability partnership, as well as private limited companies. Now, if you are a foreigner residing in Singapore and you want to start a business here, you can also apply for an entrepreneur pass or entrepass from the Ministry of Manpower. Eligible foreign entrepreneurs can apply for this entrepass within or before or within 6 months after incorporation. Now, one of the requirements to set up business in Singapore is that at least one of the directors, authorized representative, partners, or managers must be a local resident. So if you are a foreign entrepreneur looking to set up a business entity in Singapore, you must appoint a locally resident director if you wish to continue to reside outside Singapore. So if Mr. Nipita wants to set up business in Singapore, you can continue to stay in Thailand, but you must appoint a local resident in Singapore. Now, if you are moving to Singapore and apply for entrepass, you can be a director. There is no need for you to get a local person to be one of the directors. So who are local directors? You are either a citizen, permanent resident, or on an entrepass or employment pass. So you can qualify to be a locally appointed resident, to be a locally authorized representative. If you are a foreign fin holder, that means you are on a work permit, then you need to seek consent from Ministry of Manpower or the ICA, Immigration and Control Authority, before registering or taking on appointment as a director or secretary. What are tax benefits? Now, there are various incentive programs for foreign businesses conducting high value and substantive activities in Singapore. You will need a business plan. And what you need to do is to talk to EDB for various details. There are many types of incentives depending on the type of industry that you are in. And most of them are actually tax incentives. All right. One of the questions that I was asked to talk about is it difficult to get a permit to work in Singapore? So I've set up, there are basically 4 types of passes: employment pass, and these are for foreign professionals, managers, and executives. You need to earn at least 4,500 Sing dollars in a month in Singapore, and you must have acceptable qualifications. Now, the $4,500 a month is basic qualification. If you, for example, you only have 1 year post-qualification experience and you say, I earn 4,500 a month, the Ministry of Manpower is unlikely to believe you because that's too high a salary for a fresh graduate. Entrepass are for eligible foreign entrepreneurs who wish to start and operate a business in Singapore that's venture-based, or you possess innovative technology. Then we have the S-Pass, which this is for mid-level skilled staff. Candidates need to earn at least 2,500 a month and meet the assessment criteria. So currently, just to give you an example, many nurses are on S-Pass because they have a certain skill that we need. Many IT professionals are also on S-Pass because they help us to do this IT work in our country. The employment pass are usually meant for higher level professionals like managing directors, finance directors, IT controllers, and all that. Then finally, we have work permit, and this is for less or semi-skilled workers. They're in the construction, manufacturing, marine, shipyard, process, or services in sectors. So for Raymond, many of Malaysians are in Singapore because they provide us with service staff, and we don't have enough service staff. Many Malaysians are fantastic service staff workers. And I just want to say, I got to give compliments to Malaysia for the way they train their workers. So let me conclude. Singapore welcomes all sorts of foreign investments. Our underlying rationale is to create wealth or employment for Singaporeans. So if you're coming to invest in Singapore and you are able to say, look, I'm going to bring in X amount of investment, and through my investment, I would be able to create employment for Singaporeans, we will open up our arms to welcome you warmly. And some types of investment may receive preferential treatment if they are assessed to be beneficial to Singapore. For example, just a few years ago, we were very keen on biotechnology, pharmaceutical, because we think that they will help Singapore expand. And it's very easy to set up business in Singapore. There are, however, restrictions on employment or work passes because we want to make sure that Singaporeans get employed. And lastly, Singapore have some very weird laws that must be complied with. So this is for the benefit of Singaporeans. Some of you who are overseas, you may have read, well, smoking, we control smoking quite a bit. We control wearing of masks. You don't wear a mask, you come to Singapore, we will arrest you and charge you and fine you and we'll send you back. We also have strict laws on drinking. You can't buy alcohol after 10 p.m. Now, of course, many of you would have heard about our laws on chewing gum. So we restrict the sale of chewing gum in Singapore. Yeah, well, if you want to work in Singapore, unfortunately, these are some of our laws that you got to comply with. They affect us socially, but really it's for the benefit of everyone. So that's the last slide. Questions? I don't know whether we want to do the questions now or we wait for Mr. Nathan to do his piece.
We'll do it at the end of the
all
presentation.
right. Okay, all right. I will stop sharing and I'll pass the floor to Mr. Nathan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lim, for an impressive presentation. It's always interesting to learn more about Singapore's innovative ideas. Let's move on to our second esteemed speaker. So our next speaker is Nitin Chauhan, who is a partner at the firm JPC Law in London, UK. Nitin is also acting as the Vice President of the League. Nitin, please share some lights on the UK side.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. I'm just about to share my slides with everybody, so if you just bear with me, I hope everybody can see that. Yes, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. It's my privilege to be speaking with you today at the third League of Lawyers webinar series on Asian European foreign investment. Grateful to the League for giving me this platform, to Nipita for kindly moderating, and to Mr. Lim for being my attendee today. Obviously, Mr. Lim is going to be a tough act to follow, but I will try my best. By way of introduction, I am the Vice President of the League of Lawyers. I'm a partner at JPC Law in London, where I head up the firm's insolvency and litigation team. Also, as the firm's international partner, I've acted on a number of corporate and contractual disputes, including cases of fraud which have ranged from in subject matter from property to cryptocurrency. Turning momentarily to my firm, JPC is a full services London law firm with a commercial focus and an international reach. We assist our corporate clients and high net worth individuals, particularly in relation to their commercial matters, from the incorporation of companies to the purchase of prime real estate, and continue to act for clients within the UK and globally overseas, even after Brexit. That said, I'm grateful to you all for joining us this morning to hear me on a less contentious but equally important topic, particularly in the current climate due to the ongoing pandemic of foreign direct investment in the UK. Now, at the outset, it's important to note that the UK's general position is that there is no legislation which governs foreign investment. However, restrictions do apply to foreign and domestic investment in the UK. For example, foreign investors must comply with the domestic merger control regime set out in the Enterprise Act of 2002 and other domestic legislation. The UK tends to offer parity in most instances between foreign and domestic investors, with a burden equally placed on both to abide by domestic competition and regulatory laws. However, some regulations may apply depending on the circumstances of the investment. So by way of example, if an entity is regulated by the UK's Financial Conduct Authority, some people know it better as the FCA, then it's required to obtain FCA approval before undertaking that investment. That said, the UK continues to have a strong rule of law, flexible labour markets and a highly educated workforce, all of which make it attractive for foreign direct investment, whether or not it is in the EU. This is self-evident from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development 2020 World Investment Report, which showed the UK foreign direct investment stock reached 1.93 trillion US dollars, or approximately 1.36 million pounds in 2018, and climbed to $2 trillion or 1.41 trillion pounds in 2019. In terms of international scope, the UK's Office of National Statistics identified the top 3 foreign contributors to the UK foreign direct investment to be the United States, the British offshore islands, including the Isle of Man, Jersey and Guernsey, and the Netherlands. Also, its 3 largest trading partners continue to be the US, Germany and Ireland. Despite Brexit, the British economy remains resistant and London remains the financial capital of Europe, home to the European headquarters of almost 60% of companies on the Fortune 500 ranking. Furthermore, Great Britain maintains a strong currency despite its recent depreciation, and the country remains one of the most important consumer markets. Furthermore, as a world leader in financial services, it follows that this makes it one of the main forms of foreign direct investment in the UK, approximately 28.8% in total. That's almost a third. Strong foreign direct investment inflows also stem from professional services, scientific and technical services, information technology and communication, trade and repair, and the transportation sectors. In addition, real estate in the UK remains a very attractive prospect for foreign investors, owing largely to the lack of restrictions placed upon foreign investors looking to purchase property in the UK. This has certainly been the case recently, given that in response to the COVID pandemic in the UK, the government introduced a tax holiday on stamp duty tax on residential property purchase on the first £500,000 of the price in order to stimulate the property market. As a result, in recent months, there has been a home buying frenzy and the UK property market has been hitting record-breaking levels. Buyer demand has increased at significant levels, and this has caused house prices to increase substantially throughout the past 12 months. However, whilst there is low government restriction, UK mortgage lenders show a reluctance to lend to foreign investors, which may cause delays and issues which should be anticipated well in advance. That said, as of the 1st of April 2021, a new 2% stamp duty tax charge applies for all non-UK residents, similar to what Mr. Lim was speaking about in Singapore. Whilst this does not restrict the ability to invest in UK real estate, it certainly represents an added burden which should be taken into consideration. It might be important for me to point out at this stage, for anyone attending this seminar and wishing to take advantage of the stamp duty tax holiday in the UK, that you should have to act quickly, as this is also due to come to an end next week on the 30th of June 2021. However, the good news is that there will be a staggered return to normality, and stamp duty will not be charged on the first £250,000 from July to the end of September, which shall mean there are still savings to be made and the property market is not likely to cool for the foreseeable future. That said, it is also worth noting that new legislation is proposed in the draft Registration of Overseas Entities Bill of July 2018, which will require overseas entities that buy real estate in the UK to provide information about their beneficial owners, and this is due to come into force sometime this year. Turning then to common business entities, there are a range of business vehicles open to businesses in the UK, all of which are also open to foreign investors looking to start up a company here. Sole trader, private companies limited by guarantee, private companies limited by shares, and private unlimited companies and public companies are all types of available entities. Many of the benefits of investment in the UK flow from the ability of companies with a UK centre of interest to benefit from the UK's corporation tax relief schemes, regardless of the country of origin of the company or the nationality of its owners. As a result, the most common business entity in the UK is a private company limited by shares. By utilising this business vehicle, investors will potentially be able to take advantage of a range of tax relief schemes, as well as ensuring the company remains a separate legal entity and thereby enjoys the benefits of limited liability. Furthermore, the relative ease and speed of setting up a private company limited by shares in the UK is also a big draw for this type of business entity and certainly foreign investors. As previously mentioned though, the UK remains attractive for the purposes of foreign direct investment because foreign companies are currently treated in the same way as UK companies. This means it saves for complying with local competition and regulatory laws in general. There are no restrictions except in specific situations. The key potential restrictions are in the case of banks or insurance companies which are FCA regulated, which will be required to obtain FCA regulation, or those industries which are partly government owned or controlled industries. For example, transport or energy sectors transactions will require a higher level of government scrutiny. The foremost incentives within the UK used to draw in foreign investment are tax incentives, as well as the access provided to integrated markets by virtue of doing business in the UK. We shall look at each of these in turn now. There are numerous tax advantages offered to UK corporate entities which many foreign investors seek to utilise. The current rate of corporation tax in the UK is 19%, and foreign investors that incur the liability to pay UK corporation tax can therefore enjoy the same tax advantages which domestic investors enjoy. However, further tax reductions and reliefs are available. Some examples of such tax schemes are as follows. The patent box, corporation tax relief granted on profits earned from exploiting patented inventions. Research and development, or R&D relief. This is corporation tax relief on projects intended to achieve advances in science and technology. Creative industry tax reliefs. To encourage business in creative industries, companies can claim an 80% super deduction for core expenditure. Losses may also be surrendered for a payable tax credit of up to 25%. Business investment relief applies to non-UK domiciled UK residents claiming remittance basis taxation who invest foreign income in a qualifying target company. In that case, no tax is levied on foreign income invested. Venture capital or VCT relief. Venture capital trusts or VCT relief. Exemption from income tax on dividends. Income tax relief at 30% of the amount invested up to £200,000 annually, as well as relief from capital gains tax on the disposal of shares. Enterprise Investment Scheme or EIS relief. Income tax relief on 30% on up to £1 million investment, as well as a capital gains tax exemption on the disposal of shares. And finally, Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme or SCIS relief. Income tax relief at 50% on up to £100,000 of investment, as well as capital gains tax exemption on the disposal of shares. A further incentive to foreign investors will be free ports set up to be introduced by the end of 2021 at 8 English ports. Free ports in the United Kingdom refer to a series of government-assigned special economic zones where customs rules such as taxes do not apply until goods leave the specified zone. The theoretical purpose of such free ports is to encourage economic activity in the surrounding area and increase manufacturing. There will also be tax breaks given to the business located within the free trade zones. These will be in the form of removed stamp duty, full rebates for construction and machinery investment, and 5 years of zero business rates. It is yet to be seen, of course, whether the free ports will have the desired impact on bringing trade and investment to the areas which they are located, or whether such investment will merely be relocated from one area of the UK to another. Finally, looking at recent developments in the UK has recently begun to strengthen its foreign direct investment regime, particularly through the introduction of a new government bill named the National Security and Investment Bill, which is currently going through the committee stage at the House of Lords. The new National Security Investment Bill will ensure that the government can intervene and block investors in hostile states from taking over UK companies. As a result, it will be best practice to undertake a more extensive preliminary review to ascertain whether there are any risks to the transaction in question. It is worthy of note that this legislation is intended to have a retrospective effect which means that past transactions may be subject to review after the intended introduction of the bill. In addition, and whilst there is not currently a single body responsible for foreign investment, a new Office for Investment was launched on the 9th of November 2020 as part of the Department for International Trade. Whilst it is primarily to facilitate and encourage larger investments into the UK and to resolve potential issues and constraints related to such transaction, it also allows foreign investors to invest in government projects. In fact, the new Office for Investment has been introduced specifically to drive foreign investment into the UK. In this way, though, as mentioned earlier, such investments are likely to be placed under greater scrutiny too as a result. So what does the future hold? Evidently, the UK's exit from the European Union will likely have an impact on foreign investment, and such developments will need to be closely monitored. In light of Brexit and the COVID-19 pandemic, the position as to foreign investment in the UK is ever evolving. As a result, there will likely be an increasing number of new regulations and laws emerging in 2021 and beyond. It is therefore essential for foreign investors to have sufficient local knowledge and seek early advice, which is why obtaining assistance from UK-based lawyers is paramount before undertaking any such dealings. I'm grateful to you all for your kind attention this morning, and if you have any specific queries or require any further information, please do not hesitate to contact myself directly at JPC or via the League of Lawyers. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Nitin, for an excellent presentation. I'm sure the audience found it very interesting and informative. We don't have many questions from the audience. Okay, I have one question. If anyone wants to fire questions on the chat box, please feel free. So this is a question to Mr. Lim, and it is my personal interest only. You mentioned about the anti-money laundering measure in your presentation. My question is related to the cryptocurrency businesses in Singapore. Is it regulated? And if so, is the anti-money laundering measure applied to the crypto business heavier than other financial businesses?
Well, the Monetary Authority of Singapore has cautioned us to say that, well, cryptocurrency is not something that we recognize at this point of time. So if you dabble in it, you take the risk that everything may collapse. Nobody knows really what is the backing behind cryptocurrency. But there are various regulatory requirements if you want to do other things. So the penalty is really, if you get caught for doing something silly, then yeah, don't expect mercy. So unfortunately, we're still monitoring this a little bit. We are not quite sure where cryptocurrency is going to go to, but our MAS feels that, well, that's a big risk for everyone.
I see. Okay, that's good to know. So I believe that the punishment will be heavier than chewing gum in Singapore.
Yep.
Okay, so for Nitin, I've got a questions. Oh, hang on. There's a questions from Raymond to both Nitin and Lim. What is the outlook for FDI in 2021 and beyond in the UK and Singapore? Perhaps Nitin can answer this question first.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for the question. As I mentioned at the end of my presentation, the current position is that the UK government is looking at a number of legislative reforms in order to allow a greater inflow of foreign direct investment. As I've said before, there's no strict legislation, and in fact, unlike other countries, so one of the points that Mr. Lim made was about how a company over in Singapore would need there to be a local director there. Well, we don't have any such requirements. So at the moment, the laws and the ability for foreign direct investment is less restrictive. And I think that going forward and beyond 2021, those opportunities will only increase for foreign direct investment because of the globalization that we've already seen, but because of the fact that we've had certain downturns because of the COVID pandemic. We've also obviously left the European Union through Brexit. And so there are going to be new initiatives in order to increase foreign direct investment. My firm is very much focused on property transactions as well. So to use that as an example, I go back to real estate and say that in that instance, when we here in the UK try to incentivize and encourage more activity in the property market, that wasn't differentiated between the stamp duty holiday that I described earlier wasn't differentiated between foreign investors and domestic investors or purchasers. There is, of course, though, a distinction, just like in Singapore, where there is an additional tax paid by foreign investors to ensure that the domestic market is always the one that is slightly favoured. But in terms of going beyond, I can only see that the UK will continue to offer greater access to foreign investors from overseas.
Thank you, Nitin. What about Mr. Lim? Can you?
Yes. Well, I think the point that I made right from the start is that Singapore is a very small country. We are highly dependent on trade. So our focus will still be continuing to try to attract foreign investment. But whether it's within our control, the answer would be is not. So if, for example, there are trade wars between China and US, if there's a trade war between India and US or whichever other country, all these big countries have an impact on us. What I can say is that we will continue to want to welcome investments because we depend on investments for the wealth of the country. And I think that Singapore as a country has managed to attract foreign investments for a particular reason. Is very safe politically, very transparent to do business here. So as long as the government remains the same government, we think that we will continue to be able to attract investment. But at the end of the day, it really depends on the rest of the world as to what's happening elsewhere.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a few more questions, if you don't mind. This question is from Henning. UK, so this is for Nitin. UK has so far introduced to a large extent EU business law. How will the UK deal in the future with this law? Adjust it still with EU law or go its own way?
Thank you to Henning for probably the more complicated question today. Unfortunately, there's never a clear answer. What I can say is currently following Brexit, what we've done is we've continued to follow the path of EU law, certainly when it comes to EU business law, and following that path has meant that a number of the EU regulations that are already in place, they remain in place. And what we're doing is we are absorbing or indeed adapting. What that holds for the future, however, is more maybe a political question than it is a legal question, in terms of the fact that as the government tries to distinguish itself as the UK and hold its head high and rely upon its sovereignty, we may see that it departs from those EU laws. What I would say is that in the short term, that hasn't happened because it would cause a disparity, or at least it would cause too much unrest if there was an immediate breaking and developing. So to answer Henning's questions, short term, it's followed those EU laws. In the future, it's a case of if the UK government chooses that it feels that it could do better, certainly with certain trade deals and things like that, then it will exercise its right to adapt its own laws. But that will be a slow process. I wouldn't see that it happening immediately.
Thank you, Nitin. A more question from Daniel Cat. Is there a limitation on the amount of investment to invest in Singapore and the UK? Mr. Lim.
Well, we want to welcome as much investment as possible. The more you bring, the merrier, except that I just got to warn of the need to ascertain the source of the investment. So if, let's say you come from China and you're bringing $100 million into Singapore, we will welcome you, but we want to know where did the money come from. So as long as the money can be properly justified, we will be very happy to have you come.
I see. And the UK?
It's the same. There's no general restriction on the amount of investment. We have for example, we have something called the Tier 1 investment scheme, which if you bring up to £2 million for investment, then that helps with obtaining visas and the likes and to the UK. So there are a number of ways. There's no necessary restriction, but I would echo what Mr. Lim has just said. Certainly, with the introduction of the national bill as well, what we are endeavouring to do is to ensure that the UK remains at the forefront of the financial services market, because of the fact that we've always had very strong regulatory. The FCA, or the Financial Conduct Authority, continues to develop and increase those areas of regulation, because what we don't want there to happen is there to be sources which haven't been properly money laundered. So we have strong money laundering regulations here in the UK, or hostile investors coming in to take over UK business and then try to change the way in which the UK conducts its business by almost creating some kind of monopoly here. So absolutely right. We invite everybody, but you've got to play fair.
I see. Okay, well, unfortunately, there's another Brexit question for Nathan from Hanif Hamid. As UK has exited Brexit, from practical perspective, what are the significant differences for an individual investing in the UK, either in real property or share market?
The truth is that really there isn't necessarily a significant difference per se, because the incentives that or the rewards that you would enjoy, both say in the property market or the share market, weren't necessarily linked to the EU market, the UK sort of incentives. And so the truth of it is that you may necessarily think that us exiting Brexit has had a negative effect. And that's certainly the media's presentation around the world. I have spoken at a number of conferences about Brexit, and that's a completely different conversation to be had. But just to put a more positive spin on Brexit is that we are now able here in the UK to control the manner in which we do things without certain restrictions that were necessarily imposed by EU law. So as a result of that, to answer Mr. Hamid's question, I personally don't see that there is a practical or significant difference in investment here in the UK because by leaving the EU. What you may see, though, however, is that there's more of a positive where we're able to control what we're doing. That has certainly been a significant outlook delivered by the fact that we're now exercising our rights when it comes to the trade deals that we enter into. And one of the biggest accolades that I can say has been for the UK is how we rolled out our vaccination program currently during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, it's those kind of things that we're controlling now. And certainly we hope that we will be able to control those without certain EU restrictions in the future to make it positive, not only for those that live in the UK, but foreign investors from outside too.
Thank you, Nathan. Another question for Mr. Lim from Raymond Liu. How effective is the Singapore government handling the COVID-19 presently? Is the country ready for foreign investors to return as of today? If not, when?
Well, I think we are handling it quite all right. We are getting vaccinated. We are able to manage the COVID cases. I think many countries have gone through a second wave and a third wave, etc. Now, whatever Singapore does is all based on the advice of the doctors and the professionals involved. Because we are a trading nation, we think that it is important to open up our borders eventually. So that's where we are aiming for. Because we are a small country, I think that we have a better chance at solving some of these issues better than many other countries. But notwithstanding all that, there are challenges. lives are important to us. We do have low fatality rate. So that's something that we will have to manage. But definitely, we are looking to open up our borders so that business travelers can come, go, and we are looking at how we can work with other countries to manage this exchange of investments.
Okay, well, thank you. There's one last question, short one, I think, for both of you. What M&A investment opportunities in what industries are you seeing locally amidst the pandemic in UK and Singapore? Nitin, can you go first?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Nipita. The three largest sectors that we currently are, we've always had our traditional sectors and they won't change, but the ever-growing sectors currently are financial services, technology and communication, and professional services. Now, of those three areas, I would say that financial services and technology are seeing a merging of interests and minds. So, we are regulating cryptocurrency here, but in terms of mergers and acquisitions, we're certainly open to foreign companies, UK companies in all of those areas, particularly finance and technology, professional services as well. So, we still encourage lots of people to come and be part of the UK workforce as well on a professional level.
I see, thank you. And Mr. Lim?
Well, for Singapore, we are looking at a knowledge-based investments. So anything that doesn't require us to provide too many workers, to have a better level of income. Yeah, so very much like Nitin, we are all competing for the same pie, we are also a financial center. We have also placed ourselves as a legal hub. That's why we are doing a lot of push for arbitration as well, arbitration work. So we want to be known as one of the major arbitration centers in the world. Recently, we were able to persuade a few big companies to come and join us. So for example, we are trying to see whether we can go into electric vehicles as well. So many of these are work in progress, but we want businesses to be able to set up their headquarters here. So we're looking at aviation, we're looking at pharmaceutical, biomedical, advanced technologies, because we think that we have skilled workers here, and they will be able to help contribute to the growth of the company if you do set up here.
I see. Thank you very much. That's perfect timing to end our question session. Now, I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. The next League of Lawyer webinar, let me share your screen so that you can see the details. So the next Legal Lawyers webinar, the fourth in the series on foreign investments, shall be held on the 26th of August 2021, when our speakers will be from Czech Republic and the Philippines, giving the audience an insight into their respective jurisdictions in both Asia and Europe. The speaker from the Czech Republic would be Veronika Sivinova from KLB Legal, and the speaker from the Philippines would be Solo Tibe from Tariela Tagao and Associates. And the session will be moderated by Henning von Santier from von Santier and Schulz, Germany. Now, before we finish, I have an announcement to make. The League of Lawyers has launched its first ebook on foreign direct investment with contributions from several members, and edited by our president, Raymond Ma, and Nitin, our vice president. Everyone at the League of Lawyers is very proud of this publication, and we hope it is both an interesting read and a helpful resource to you all. If you are interested in receiving a copy of the ebook, you can download it from our website. Also, later on today, you will receive an email with a feedback from us, and to ask you for your feedback on today's sessions and on what topic you would like to have future webinar on. Now, ladies and gentlemen, finally, we come to the end part of our webinar. I would like to say thanks again to our esteemed speakers, Mr. Lim Bo-Xuan and Nitin Chauhan, for the informative and interesting presentations. Also, thanks to the League of Lawyers and support from Ma Wen Kwai to make today's session successful. And also, I would like to say thanks to the audience for your active participation. Hopefully, the presentation will be beneficial for everyone. Thank you for your attention. I wish you a good rest of the week and hope to see you again at our next session. Goodbye.